This video is proudly sponsored by NewType. Tools, accessories, model kits, these guys have it. Hop over to newtypehq.com and use the link below to help this channel out for future builds. Well, my dudes and dudettes, it's that time again where I must get started on my next maiden voyage on building another starship model kit. But before I get that, I want to revisit a very popular franchise that has been near and dear to my heart, and that is going to be the Metal Gear franchise. Now, for quite some time, you dudes and dudettes have been heavily requesting me to build another Metal Gear model kit, but I didn't really have much interest in building it until I revisit my all-time favorite mech game, Zone of the Intersecond Runners, and this game holds a really sweet spot in my heart because this game is fundamentally the reason why I got into Metal Gear. So thanks to this game, I am a hardcore fan of the Metal Gear franchise. So without further ado, we are going to be finally building the Metal Gear Ray for Metal Gear 2 Guns of the Patriots. And at first glance, I remember exactly how I felt when I bought this model kit. I was incredibly intimidated how I was going to pull off the metallic look. Was going to use between 2 to 3 different textures of blue, maybe close to 5, I don't know. I was really obligated to actually make this effect look really cool, and that's why I bought this. I for one don't want to continue building the same kit over and over again. I want to try to one-up myself every single time by challenging myself with other unique third-party kits. So on the first side of the box art, I was really surprised that this model kit comes with its own camouflage water slide decals. Now you guys know the Metal Gear Rex was really challenging for me when I built that 4 years ago. It's nice that they incorporate into water slide decals. Once again, more action poses to put this Metal Gear Ray. Another variation color of the Ray, which is really interesting. You get tiny little figurines of Old Snake and Revolver Ocelot, and followed by the Haven Soldiers, aka the Frogs. So without further ado, let's take a look inside the box. As always, you are happily greeted with the instruction manual, which I have to say, very clean, very simple, love the aesthetic, and once again, the mech design is done by our celestial mech god, Yoshi Shinkawa. Once again, big fan of Yoshi, and followed by the last page, give you a nice little tight shot of the Metal Gear Ray when it's in its correct color scheme. Now, let's talk briefly about the runners. Now, the runners themselves may look simplistic at first, but shockingly enough, it is very complex. There are parts that move in a certain angle, small little bits in here that actually go to compartments that you would never imagine, and followed by the actual opening closing mandibles that actually has 2 separate parts is very welcome. So that way you don't have to damaging anything. Now, the color scheme itself is definitely going to be the big challenge part, and I give props to Kotobukiya of giving you an accurate way on how to paint it the way how you would see in the video game. But if you don't like the one in the video game, you can always go with the alternative version. But I personally love the fact that they give you options on how to make those gold pieces look exactly how you would see in the video game. But let's talk about what's more exact is the actual water slide decals. Now, once again, this is solely going to depend upon on how you paint your model kit. If the blues are too bright, the water slide decals are going to pop out. If the greens are too bright, then the water slide, say it with me, the water slide decals are going to pop out again. So you need to have a perfect balance that works with the water slide decals without overpower it. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the runners. Right off the bat, I dig the action base, which was a little bit more dynamic looking, but it's okay. It keeps the model kit upright. Now, these particular sand yellow pieces are great. There's tons of great surface details, so if you want to do some kind of panel line on these areas with a nice little metallic gold on top, these parts are going to look great. But above all else, these particular marine green pieces are absolutely great. So if you want to just do a straight up build of this model kit, no one's judging you. These will do just fine. Just keep in mind when you add the actual water slide decals on top of it, they're going to stand out a little awkwardish. Followed by the clear runners that comes with his model kit. Surprisingly, I don't see any clear runners for the eyes, which is okay. But when I look at the actual additional pieces, I notice that there's something really unusual about this face sculpt. So there are 2 unique face sculpts. One that is actually, I believe, the drones from Metal Gear 2, and then it's the actual primary head for the actual Ray in the video game. So I'm going to need to do some customizations there, followed by the water slide decals. I love this. This was such a big headache for Rex, and now that it's actually done the water slide form, this will be no problem. So without further ado, let's get started, my dudes. So after sneaking in some free time on and off from work, I finally got these pieces finally cut out and sanded down and ready to go to be painted. Now, before I get started working on this project, I need to focus on a proper scheme of how to light up the eyes. Now, the eyes themselves isn't going to be the hard part, but at the same time, it's definitely going to prove to be a challenge. This isn't the first time I've done this with a Kotobukiya kit. I believe the last time I did customized eyes for an actual Kotobukiya model kit was Vic Viper, because there weren't any clear runners for the eyes compared to Jeopardy and Anubis that had clear eyes. This particular Metal Gear does not have it. it. It has the exact same metallic blue sticker like you would saw in Metal Gear Rex, which by then on that one, I actually snuck in some LEDs, but just sneaking in an LED in those particular eyes is going to prove to be problematic because I don't want to be overblown on the camera. So I'm going to need to drill out those areas out with a nice little Dremel and then actually sneak in a fiber optic light in there to make it glide the way I want. But definitely one thing I want to pop out the most is the primary weapon, the laser cutter. Now, I'm not going to use a very bright LED, just something simple that makes it look really cool. Now, a next challenging part in this model kit is hiding the power supply. For quite some time building model kits, I have always had an external power supply wire sticking out, and since there's just enough hollow out area inside the upper torso, I will be sneaking in a very small 3-volt lithium-ion battery to power the Metal Gear Ray. Now, I do wish I had time to purchase the touch-sensitive switch, so that way I didn't go into the hassle of actually having a physical switch to turn the model kit on and on, but I need to work what I need to work with, and I have very little time. Alright, so now that the eyes are fully hollowed out, I can now get started on painting this bad boy. This part was definitely kind of stressful, but at the same time, I'm super relieved on how it turned out. So, what are we going to be using for the primary colors for this particular model kit? Now, this part is going to be a bit complicated. Once again, the Metal Gear Ray is a combination between like a metallic green and a metallic blue. Now, I was originally going to go with two particular companies, Giga and Studio G, but I didn't like the way how their metallic colors looked, so I ended up opting to go with Mr. Color 57 and Mr. Color 77. These are going to be excellent candidates to pull off that nice metallic look for Metal Gear Ray. Alright my dudes and dudettes, we've reached the next challenging part on this model kit, and that's actually going to be doing custom painting for specific key areas. Now the one areas that I'm going to be heavily focusing a lot of energy on is going to be the metallic gold pieces. Now Metal Gear Ray has a two-tonal shift when it comes to the metallics. Some metallic areas are a little bit on the darker side, slightly copper, while other sides are more like a bright gold, and we are going to be using the combination of those particular golds. Now the key reason why you don't have one overpowering the other, if you look at the actual promotional work here, the actual little pylons underneath the arm as well as parts around the mouth, it's on a little bit more of a darker side layer, brighter gold. So to achieve this color scheme, I'm just going to use a very small amount of the actual gold, and then I'm going to use a teensy amount of the copper just to give it a little bit darker to create some kind of shift between the two different types of golds. Alright, so we've now reached the next exciting part in this model kit, and that's actually installing the power supply. Now, I do wish I had time to buy the touch-sensitive switch, but once again, I need to work what I need to work with, and I'll probably implement that particular switch on a future model kit. For this particular one, I'm going to be using a coin-sized lithium-ion battery, 3V particularly, for this particular model kit. Now, the chest cavity is loose enough to the point where you can actually open up in the future to replace the battery, so it shouldn't be a problem. Alright, my dudes and dudes, we are literally at the home run stretch here. We're literally halfway done, and now we need to tackle the most challenging part of this market besides putting in LEDs, and that, my dudes, is going to be the water slide decals. Now, these water slide decals may look easy at first, but you need to pay very close attention on how they are shown on the instruction manual, because not all the diagrams go in the exact same order. So to cut down on any errors or any mistakes on this model kit, just please take your time when following the instructions correctly on the instruction manual. So before this video gets started, I just want to personally say thank you guys so much for your patience. I know it's been a bit of a dry spell for a long time, but I'm starting to get back into swing to making content. But with that being said, if you guys want to catch up on any future content that will be happening on this YouTube channel, you can always catch me on Instagram, Threads, and even X. And then for those who want to support the channel by just donating $1, every little bit helps to buy these really unique and exotic model kits. So with that being said, let's get started on the brief review of the Metal Gear Ray. So right off the bat, if you're a big Metal Gear fan, this kit is definitely for you. Now, I know a lot of you have watched my previous video on the Metal Gear Philanthropist, and you know that I had some pretty serious gripes when it came to the actual posability, stance, transformation gimmicks, You know, to say the least, that was like my biggest concern with this kit. This actually does a very, very good job with its additional accessory parts, and particularly the nice little stand that comes with it. Now, with this particular action base, it actually is a very welcome feature because you don't have to be stuck with the Kotobukiya action base that definitely goes for a pretty penny nowadays. I believe it's like $20, $30 depending where you buy it on eBay. But this particular action base that comes with this ray is actually quite nice. It keeps it nice and stationary. You're actually able to put it in some serious dynamic poses like you would see in Metal Gear 4, Guns of the Patriots, and even when Metal Gear is being activated in Metal Gear 2, the Sons of Liberty. Now, with the action base itself, it's actually really nice how it's designed. It's very reminiscent of, I guess you can say, the VR simulation that Raiden is undergoing in Metal Gear 2. Some say it was a VR, others say it's a part on Arsenal gear, but it's nice to see that that added detail that's been implemented on this particular model kit is very well done, and I actually like it because it actually goes with the style of a VR feel. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, and let's talk about action poses. Now, I was surprisingly shocked on how many action poses you can actually pull off on this unique model kit, and in many ways, it made me fall in love with it a little bit more. For starters, you can put it in a standard upright pose to make it look like it's in stationary mode, or you can have it like in a predatory or predator stance, like how it would look like in Metal Gear 4 when it's staring down the Metal Gear Rex. I love that. And then the added bonus feature is the opening and close mandible. Now, when it comes to detail, this model kit is not shy to show it. I mean, everything down to the opening and closing mandibles that actually initiates the, I believe, the primary weapon for this particular Metal Gear, which I think is called the Jet Cutter, which you only see it at one time in Metal Gear 2. And then you have the, I believe it's the anti-ship missiles that are around the side parts of the knees, as well as in back of the Metal Gear Ray, and those little details are great. Most model kits or manufacturers will just overlook that little detail and just have you paint over it, but those particular pieces are actually separate. So the kit does a wonderful job by holding your hand when it comes to custom painting, but it kind of ends there when it comes to really sophisticated parts. For starters, there is these circular patterns that are all over the Metal Gear Ray that requires a great deal of hand painting, which for some of you experienced builders, that's not going to be a problem, but for those who want to get something close to a collectible style on how to make it look the way how you see in the promotional box, you're going to have to put the extra time and effort to make it look the way how you see it. But it even gets even more crazier when it comes to the actual color paint scheme. I went through, I believe, 3 different alterations when it came to actually paint it the way how I would see Metal Gear Ray in the video games. Now, depending on how you view it, Metal Gear Ray definitely has like a metallic bluish green to it in Metal Gear 2, whereas in Metal Gear 4 it has more of a drabby, grayish green, very saturated. To be fair, you only see it in one scene in the game, and it doesn't really do a justification, but there's enough comparison between the two that you can choose between the kind of color scheme you wanted, and I particularly went with the metallic green and blue. And what really sparked this interest of coming with this particular color scheme was building my Kotobukiya Zone of the Enders Jehudi model kit, and this color scheme just absolutely kills it. It blends perfectly between the soft metallic golds and the copper golds, and then when you add the additional panel lining to it, it just makes this model kit look absolutely phenomenal. And I have to say, it's probably one of my favorite Metal Gear kits in my personal library. So that's a great deal of the positivities. Now let's talk about the cons. Now, there really isn't much negative I can say about this kit. Sure, I would have loved the fact that the head might have had some kind of face sculpt to where you can put in a clear part and sneak in an LED light. Not the end of the world, but it would have been a nice little added feature. They did it with Jehudi, I believe Anubis from Zone of the Enders, as well as Vic Viper, but I was really surprised that they didn't do this with Metal Gear Ray. Instead, they opted to putting like a metallic green silver sticker in front of it, which by no means not a bad thing. But it would have been great if they implemented that onto this particular model kit to make it even more cooler looking, especially for those who, you know, love to put LED lights in model kits. Now, you probably say the next concerning part with this particular model kit would be weight distribution problems. Surprisingly, even without the action base that include with the model kit, it does a very good job by actually standing upright and maybe like 1 or 2 action poses. Now, when it comes to the actual action base itself, it could have been a little bit more flashy. I mean, I would have been okay if it was like more like a circular pattern instead of these 2 little, I guess you can say standardized plates. But again, it's a small little gripe compared to its predecessor, the Metal Gear Philanthropist, and we all know how, woof, don't like that kit at all. Now comes a big burning question: is this model kit worth the purchase? And Here's the thing. I might have had my gripes with the Metal Gear Philanthropist, but I had a blast building Metal Gear Rex almost 4 years ago. And the exact same nostalgia feeling I got building this particular model kit, it feels like at home, man. And plus, it's not too expensive to buy. I remember when this kit was only in limited quantities, it was going for like around $180 to even $200, but since they reprinted them, now's a great time to get your hands on this model kit because it's an absolute must buy. I had a blast working on it. Sure, it took me like 3.5 months, but hey, I'm a father and my job takes top priority before I work on these model kits. So, sacrifices need to be made. And even though it took me long to actually work on this model kit, I enjoyed every aspect of it. And it would be great to get more Metal Gears from Kotobukiya in the future, but unfortunately, the Metal Gear lineage kind of ends there. Sure, you can say they can probably build a Metal Gear Shagohod, but let's be real here. The Shagohod is not a Metal Gear. Just putting that out there. But hey, who knows? Maybe they'll do a Metal Gear Revengeance model kit. That'd be pretty dope. I'll be down with getting that, but only time will tell. And right now, Metal Gear, as a franchise of itself, it's kind of in limbo. So whenever the next big Metal Gear comes out, chances are we'll definitely get them up. And with that being said, thank you dudes and dudettes for watching this video. And as always, if you guys do me a favor, click like and subscribe and share this video with your friends and family. And I will see you dudes and dudettes on the next build. Later. I get to know one leg. It's hot in here. It's really, really hard to keep a straight face when it's hot in here. It's hot.